Great. All right. I think we're ready. Hi, guys. I am Mikela Prevost. You're here for Right On Con. I'm here to just answer a few of your questions. We're going to be talking about how to use your idols to help you write in your own voice. So please give me any questions you have. Just to let you know, I am a picture book author illustrator. This is my latest picture book. It's called Let's Have a Dog Party. Basically, it'll be coming out March 19th, so I'll give you the quick little synopsis of it. A little girl named Kate has a cute little old pup named Frank. She has this harebrained idea to basically have a birthday party just one random day for her dog. Invites all the friends over, all her neighbors, and throws this crazy wackadoo party. Everyone is super excited to be there, except for Frank. So there's your conflict for the book. Wildness and craziness ensue. So please, I hope to go out and get a chance to look at it, pick it up at the library, buy it if you want, but just experience Frank and just see how I tried to do a book about empathy and introverts and extroverts and also just confetti and craziness all mixed up into one cute little book. So just whenever you have any questions, I'd love to hear from them. I have a few books here that I've used just to help me grow in my writing. And just as I develop, I am, just to be completely transparent, a fairly new author. I've been illustrating for over 10 years, but once I really started diving in to just books that an authors I loved, I just couldn't stop from wanting to write and wanting to experience my own voice. So if you feel like you've got that kind of passion in you to want to say something that you just feel like isn't being said, it's not out on the shelf, I'd really love to just experience that and answer any questions you have for what is just burning and dying in your heart. So, all right, let's see if there's any... Seeing if there's any questions. Let's see. Hey, Amy. All right. How can you emulate a favorite author's writing while feeling like how can you emulate a favorite author's writing without feeling like you are trying to copy them? I think that is such an amazing question because I struggled with that a lot. I still struggle with that. One book I'm going to show you really quick. This was one I couldn't not stop reading and absorbing, and it's just a weird book. My Rhinoceros by John Agee. One of his books just came out. I think it's The Other Side of the Wall, or the wall that was, I don't know, it's the wall that was built, but just about the wall and just everything that's happening now in American politics. This book, though, it just took this whole idea of having a pet, but it being a rhinoceros instead of the typical like cat or dog or goldfish or parrot. And one thing I really did that was helpful for me to kind of break down the way he wrote in his process was I typed out the entire book. Then I got to see the word count, which of course for picture books is usually pretty minimal. Like they want you to stay under 500, like really that sweet spot. Goldilocks space is around 250, maybe 300. So with this book, I couldn't believe, for as dense as the material was, the concept, how sparse the text was. And I mean, it was, I don't know, like 220, the word count. So it was very, very minimal. But yet the concept, like I said, was just really dense. So I typed it all out. I looked at how it was broken down like page-wise and page turn. And it really gave me this sense of like each sentence has to make an impact. It has to be saying something on two different levels that I need for my own writing to do. And how do I see where the points were where he twisted the story and gave you something unexpected at a point where you thought, you know, in subconscious, you know what's going to happen. And that's where he would twist it. So I think a way, if you really want to emulate someone's writing, but again, like you don't want to copy it, really take it apart. It's like taking apart a motorcycle. You've got to like take it apart, look at how it's built, why something was put, like a certain gear, a certain spoke was put where it was in accordance with the rest of it. And you're going to start to, I think, subconsciously pick up those beats and that mannerism. And you are you, like you're naturally going to just have your own personality, and your own voice is going to come through, hopefully through that filter of someone that you really love. And again, then once you feel like you've written and it's kind of gotten that essence of that writer that you really love, give it to your beta reader, give it to someone you really trust, and let them read it, and then ask that question, hey, did that sound like, John Agee? Did it give you that sense? And if they are hopefully honest and true, they'll really say, yeah, you kind of, it seemed a way too similar. So you got to go back and rework it, retool it, and see where you can interject some of yourself and subtract a little bit of their voice. Awesome. What are some ways to learn from your writing idols other than just reading their books, i.e. social media? Oh, great question. I think, I don't know, I'm at this weird stage right now with the social media. I feel like there are some writers and illustrators who they present one thing through their books and through their work, and then maybe another side of themselves through social media that isn't as helpful, but that's just some of them. I think there are some authors like Kate, I always her name, Kate DiCamillo. She's got this crazy following on Facebook, and her writing just to her followers is just so eloquent. It's so beautiful. So I think if you can find someone, an author that you really trust and you love their work, and their social media fills you up and it gives you a source of just encouragement and just renewal and excitement, and it's just like spurs you on to want to keep writing, then you need to follow them like through the high hills. But there are some authors, they're just not, they've got their own thing going on, just like we all do. We're all people and we all have lives. You just follow their work, try to emulate that, because sometimes it can be maybe slightly not super helpful to be following them on social media because they've got their own things going on. But I would just say, again, like study their work. I would study, like, again, John Agee. He's written a ton of books. And I've really like just consumed all of his back books, and you could see their progress of how he went from like a really, really elaborate illustrator, lot more detailed, and his concepts were just a little too wordy and a little like just over the top for kids, and how he slowly like dialed it back a little. But even though the wording and the writing has gotten a bit simpler, still the concepts are really rich and deep. So looking back at everything else they've written, I think is really such a great way to continue just seeing the trail and the progress of those authors that you just are really loving and wanting to, trying to break off a chunk of them and add it onto your own piece. All right, next question. Besides John Agee, oh dear, I will be right there. Okay, just a second. Little malfunction here. Okay, here we go. Let's see, where was that question? Could I get that question one more time, please? Here we go. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Who, besides John Agee, who are some of your writing idols? What was it about them that inspired you? I'm really going on about John Agee. I'll show you a couple others. This one, if you guys are in your 40s like I am, you probably know him. Calvin and Hobbes. I mean, not a novelist, not a YA or a middle grade or a picture book, but just a great just writer. I loved him growing up, and I think his just the way he sees kids and their exuberance, their joy, their anger, just their giant ball of these emotions in these tiny little sticky short bodies. has really stuck with me and been a part of like who I am as just wanting to be a writer and an illustrator. And just all the complexities he dealt with. So I, completely consumed everything that he wrote growing up. And I still read it now because, again, like I've grown up and now I understand these concepts as an adult rather than a 6-year-old kid when I was reading it. He's just instrumental in my journey. Another book that probably you guys know, Shel Silverstein. I mean, wacky as it is, if there was one thing I would do, it'd be like cover myself in tattoos of his illustrations because I just love him so much. Again, the brevity in his books and just the unexpectedness, like a plunger for a hat. This just perplexed me to no end when I was little, like where he thought the idea of having a hat be a plunger. So little silly things like that. I've always just gravitated toward just the innocence and just the uniqueness and how children just do things so unexpected. So I've just kind of gravitated toward writers like that, and just people like writers with their own voice, and that weren't trying to get any agenda across. They're just trying to mirror back the world that usually kids saw, and maybe that we're not seeing anymore as adults. And this, another one I had, this one I feel like was a lark that I got. So my parents had me signed up for the, like I can read book of the month club. And I think it was just a way to keep me busy for a while. So I'd stop bugging them. So I'd get these books and they'd toddle off to my room and read them for a little bit. I wasn't a super great reader, which was another thing I think to help kids overcome is writing to kids that are struggling to read, and keeping the words simple and the concepts still rich, but simple, that a struggling reader can feel that sense of empowerment and accomplishment by reading something that they normally might not be able to get through because it's just a little too dense word-wise. So I loved this book so much. I read this so much that I memorized it, and there's just 3 short stories in it. And so I would recommend, if you can, picking up anything by Mike Thaler, and the illustrations are just really simple. They're really approachable. They're not super crazy with detail, which I'm nothing against that. But when you're just still trying to, as a reader with difficulty, such as myself, I needed things that were approachable. And so for me, this was very approachable because it was something I visually could understand, and the wording and the dialogue was what killed me. So this was actually my absolute favorite book in the collection. And this one I memorized, and I told to my grandma one night while she was sleeping in my bunk bed because we had nowhere else to sleep. So she slept in the bottom bunk and I slept on the top. And I just read this over, like just recited this book to her while she's nodding in and out of sleep, really trying to get the rest, but, still trying to, accommodate her very rambunctious grandchild. But I loved that it was scary. I loved that it scared me just enough. It gave me just enough of that thrill, but without sending me, screaming and into the covers, having nightmares for days on end. So I loved that about this book, that there was something, again, kind of scary, but yet that I think I was 7 at the time, my mind could grasp, and I wasn't afraid to pick up again. It made me, again, that sense of accomplishment, like I can do this. I can read this scary book all by myself. So those are just a few, but I'd love any other questions you guys have. Great. Next one. How do you find a good balance between time spent writing and time spent reading and learning from other writers? Oh, balance. I think the eternal quest for anyone is just the balance. I think for number one, you need to put down your phone. And I'm talking to myself. And instead of for me to hide my face in my phone, I need to hide my face in a book. I'm naturally an introvert. And I feel like it's very, very easy for us now just to, we have one moment of respite. I'll just play on my phone. Like I need to carry that book with me as armor. And dive into that book, whatever I'm reading at any moment. And whether it's a picture book or a novel, I mean, I just read Circe, which was insanely great. Her voice in that book was amazing. So that was one I was able just to hide and bury my face in without shame, knowing that I was absorbing something that maybe at this point in my career, maybe I'm not going to write like that, but 10, 20 years from now, maybe I will pick up something that she did, some phrase or turn of phrase, or just her tone will like slowly seep into my own writing style. Yeah, just finding that balance though. One thing you can do is just make a commitment to yourself, either whether it's, I think it's Julia Cameron who did the morning pages, getting up and writing down everything that's in your head for the 2.5 pages full in the very early morning. That was really helpful for me, just to put aside any anxieties and worries and fears and concerns I had in the very early morning, and just purging it and letting it go. And whether that was just like, I don't think I'll ever get a book deal, I don't think I'll ever get an agent, I don't think this will ever happen, and then just slowly building that up and knowing like, oh, I remember writing about that, and this and this have happened. Okay, I can see this journey building. All right, I see my own story playing out. That's really helpful. So doing the morning pages. Another thing, again, like I try to do, I'm a morning person. You got to work with your strengths. If you're a night person, if you have kids, whatever, you just have to find that small amount of time just to write in. Even, I mean, if it's taking your notebook with you and you're in pickup line, I have 3 kids, so I'm always driving all over, but doing pickup lines and just carrying things with you. And one thing I really took as encouragement was listening to the audible book of Tina Fey's Bossy Pants, and just how great that book is and how encouraging it was, and just how I love her just as a person, as a writer, as an actor. But she, in an interview, was saying she would write at every single moment she had. She had her book with her, or laptop with her, and while she was getting her makeup done for some crazy premiere or whatever, she would be writing. And if she was on the subway, she would be writing. And I kept thinking, my life is busy. We all have lives that are busy, but this woman, I assume her life is ultra busy. And if she can write this very long, elaborate, well done book, I can definitely sit down and spend 5 minutes just writing. And another thing to do, again, just for that balance, is also to leave at a point where you want to get back to where you are. And I don't know if it was Hemingway or Ray Bradbury that said, like, always leave the page like wanting more. So end somewhere where you're happy, don't end someone where you're stuck. So even if you have to push through and you're at a place where you just hate this so much, just keep writing, and then stop immediately when you're excited, because that's what's going to like spur you on to want to get back to it and finish that thought and finish that scene or finish that whatever is happening that's brewing, because your back of your mind, it's writing, it's typing, it's getting it done, and you can't wait to get back to it. So that's a really great tip. I try to stick with, not always possible, but again, balance. So yeah, try to get back to it. Try to find the time when you can. Try to commit, that 5-10 minutes every day, even if it's just that much, because as you know, that 5 minutes usually rolls over. Once you get in a groove, it rolls over to 20 minutes. It might roll over an hour. And then the next thing you know, you're late, whatever, for a doctor appointment or picking up your kids, because you're just so excited about what you've just created. So next one, I keep doing this. Okay. How do you overcome the fear or self-doubt that can crop up when you try to compare yourself to your writing idols? Sorry, laughing maniacally, but I think, again, and my husband and my illustrating friends have to remind me of this constantly. This isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. And you can only do those first few steps. That you have to just start that journey. Just like Lord of the Rings, they have to start somewhere. They can't just, chapter 2 end up in Mordor. It has to be a journey, and the journey is part of the richness of it. I try to think of with just anything in our life, it's just going to be a process. And I silly a little observation or analogy I came up with was when my husband and I got married. We had this little apartment, and we needed to furnish it. And of course, relatives were kind enough. They gave us like hand-me-down couches, and everything was secondhand and thrift store this, and just everything looked hodgepodge, and it just wasn't what we wanted. We're newly married. Oh my goodness, isn't it supposed to be beautiful? Should we look like the people on TV and the rom-coms that have the, Pier 1 house? And we'd go to people's houses. The older friends of ours that had donated said used furniture, and see these gorgeous, couches, and just everything was done so well, but they'd been married 20 years. And we couldn't keep that in perspective. Like, oh, right, they were us, but 20 years previously, they had been here. They had the broken down furniture and the TV propped up on books. Like this was them. We just don't see it. They built it all up. And I have to remember that with myself. I mean, I've just illustrated a couple other books, but this is my Dog Party is my first author illustrator, and it's very easy to get sucked into like more, I want more, but it will come eventually. And this is again just like my first step on my trip to Mordor. That it's gonna grow and it's gonna build, and the process and the journey is part of it. I need to enjoy it, and I really. I don't know. I really am going to try to stress like staying off of Facebook and staying off of Twitter where you follow people. It's good, but it can be really bad because the thief of joy is comparison. So just focus on what you're doing and be proud of your accomplishments. And if you sat down at the computer and you added 100 new words to your word count, amazing, because that's 100 words you didn't have yesterday. And you're just slowly just building, walking those walks and leaving those footprints in the sand behind you on toward that journey of just making more and more of what you are, and knowing that at this point in your life, in your journey, your voice is what you have at the moment, but you're just going to keep throwing things in your basket and growing as a writer. And you haven't reached that thing to add to your basket yet. So you just got to keep adding to that journey. So I'm telling this to you and to myself. So just so you know, I'm still on my way. Wonderful. You mentioned typing out the entire book of a text of a book you love. Do you have any other techniques you used when writing a book written by an idol? Yes. Another book, an author, illustrator I love is Oliver Jeffers. He just writes really kind of wacky concepts, very just absurd, but humorous. And I love that. And I want my writing to be more of that. And I know like a zipper, it'll slowly, I'm hoping will come together like that. Maybe the grooves won't line up this year or next year, but I'm hoping it'll slowly start to take that path. And maybe not, maybe I'll find someone else completely become infatuated with. But one thing I did that helped me just to get me even just for this book and the other books I have written right now, and they're out on their own journey. Waking up in the morning, I would try to do my morning pages, or if I just was like, I don't want to do that, I would find a topic. Like there's lots of things on Instagram where they do topics every day. It's just like very short little word suggestions, and there are different words for every day. And what I would do to literally like squeeze this sponge dry of ideas is think of that author, and like a word maybe like boat, like I said, and I would try to scribble down every single story idea, keeping in mind what would they do, like what would Oliver Jeffers do, what would John Agee do, and I know I'd never like totally nail it on the head, but just keeping them in the back of my mind, like I'd like to see them write a book about this. It would slowly start, the seed of an idea would start to grow. So I'd write down, I'd have like boat, try to think of like 10 or at least getting to the very end of the page, because I write longhand, getting to the very end of the page with as many ideas of that just random boat idea, like taking a boat, using the boat to sail to the moon. And believe me, 98% of them were garbage. But eventually there would be one idea, and it was always toward the bottom when I was exhausted and giving up on myself, that one idea would spark. And that was the one where, like, oh, I like this. And that's the one that would get the wheels turning, that would get me excited to want to come back later and start just jotting down more ideas about that. Maybe it had to have that flair of, Oliver Jeffers or Shel Silverstein. Maybe it had that flair of whoever I was thinking of in the back of my mind. Maybe it wouldn't, but I just had to accept, like, okay, well, this is who I am. This is my voice. Hopefully they're ingrained in me somewhat, so I'll get to see a little bit of them somewhere. But if not, I just need to accept it. And this is the story, like, my muse or my brain wants to tell. And now at this point, I've got to get it out. I have to get this story idea out there, at least on paper. Maybe it'll never be seen by the light of day, but for me, it's got to just be purged. All right. As a picture book author, do you draw inspiration mostly from other picture book authors, or why are the middle grade YA adult writers play an equal role in my writing? Yes and yes. I think it's very important and for all writers to be reading everything. And there are definitely times I read a lot of picture books just to kind of see, as you probably heard other writers tell you, you got to read what's current. You got to read, if you want to be published traditionally, you've got to read what's been coming out like the last 3 to 5 years. So I'll do that a lot. So I do a lot of like work reading, a lot of picture books, the ones that just come out, I try to read immediately just to see where the market's going. So that's kind of my work reading. But for me, just to escape, I'll definitely jump into a middle grade, a YA, just a novel that just helps my brain just decompress and not think about picture books and not think about working. And I know, like I said, like that writing's going to seep in. I mentioned just reading Circe, and of course, again, her name like completely escapes me because I just gobbled up her book so quickly. I just read, oh gosh, the book, the middle grade, the war that saved my life, by Kimberly, something. So sorry, I'm so sorry, but I again gobbled it up. Kimberly Brubaker, and those two, she's got that one in the companion book, and I'm really hoping she comes out with another one, just about a girl with a body difference. She growing up during World War II, and that has just now completely spurred me on to wanting to read more historical fiction. I just finished Fever, 1793, so about the yellow fever in Philadelphia, that outbreak. That was great. So just again, seeing how the wording, the voice, and just I think of paragraphs kind of like those breaks, almost like page breaks for picture books, because with picture books, the page turns really play almost like a third voice. Like there's the writer, the illustrator, and then it's just that page turn of like giving you the next sense of what's to come. So I really look at that now, and try to integrate that into my writing. Like, and so yeah. And then another one I've read, and I have to keep myself from reading it, is the Patrick Ness, and he wrote it with an author who died before she could finish it. Of course, again, her name escapes me, but it was the monster. Completely escaped me. It's a Patrick Ness book about a monster comes, and it was turned into a movie. I didn't see it because I love that book so much that I didn't want it to change my view of the book. So I would definitely recommend that, reading that. I think that's consistent. A monster calls. Thank you so much. But yes, it was. Thank you. That book, so good. So you can tell I'm not reading authors and titles very well. I just dive right into the book. But it just changed the way and allowed changed the way I looked at books as how they need to be safe. This book let, I think, I'm gonna start crying now thinking about it. Let teenagers, and now my 14-year-old is just reading it. Let teenagers be present with their emotion and let them understand it's okay to feel what you feel. Ooh, I'm getting emotional. So I would definitely recommend that. But I would love at any point if you want to message me or give me or anything on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. I would love any book recommendations because I am always looking for the next book to read and to gobble up. Um, because I can't not stress how important it is to read outside of your own genre and how that will just feed you as a writer to help you grow in your own way. All right. Have you ever met any of your writing idols? If so, how did it go? If not, what would you ask them if you met them? This is such a great question. And I am terrified actually because I've heard someone say, and I think it was actually an idol of mine that I wanted to meet, mention you never want to meet your idols because it just there's the point of view of the person you have in your head, and that's your first impression of them. And then when you meet them, it's different. And it can be somewhat discouraging, I think, if it doesn't go absolutely how you have envisioned in your head. And in my head, it's always we exchange phone numbers and then we're best friends and we're talking on the phone all day. So there's no one that can live up to that expectation. Um, so I have met a few author illustrators, and some were I very much idolized, and they were just, people. And there wasn't this like kismet attraction of like our brains meeting and having this wonderful moment of like we could write together. It was just like, hey, well, thanks for coming. All right, nice to meet you. And I think you have to go in, if you want to meet your idols, go in with a realistic expectation. Like they're tired. They probably took a long flight to do this book signing or wherever you're meeting them at. They're just going to be people like you, and they're probably hungry. They probably have to go to the bathroom. They've got a lot of other things going on. So just give them grace, give them space. Just thank them. Hopefully, if you have some kind of connection with them, artistically in a way, like that would be great. But don't expect too much. Just thank them for their work and let them know like you really appreciate what they're putting out, because it's not only feeding you, it's feeding other readers, and it's just continuing to generate this love of this media that we have. So yeah, I don't know what else to say, but just be kind. Is it important to have beta readers you idolize the same writers as you? Do you have any good resources for people looking for picture book readers? I would. This is a good question. If you can try to find, if you, very good word. Okay, if you can, I think it really helps to have someone on someone who, if you can, that's in the process of maybe being published, or the market is so um, tumultuous at times, because you can think like, okay, this kind of writing, the style, this is what's really in and on trend. So I need to either edit my story, or I need to just start thinking in this to get my book sold. And unfortunately, that's like a mindset we kind of have to have if we want to be in this business. It doesn't mean completely sacrifice and kill all your darlings. It does mean, though, it's more likely your book's going to get picked up by a publisher if it's falling in line with that loose guidelines. I would say not staying strictly with that with those parameters. But having the beta reader, though, if they have a good sense of the market and knowing what is looked for, it really helps. I have a couple beta readers. One has miraculously has become my idol now. I'm just meeting her off chance. I'm give a shout out to Beth Ferry. I met her at a conference, the SCBWI conference in 2017 in New York, and she was the sweetest, most amazing woman. So now I completely idolize her. She was over the moon, just amazing. So I try to throw things toward her because she was busy, and I love her feedback because it's very honest and it's not sugar coated. And you need to find someone who can be honest, who can be slightly not ruthless, but just give it to you straight. And because that's the only way you're really going to grow and really succeed and to thicken up your skin. And for me, my skin is thin, so having a thicker skin is always going to help me, even though it hurts. Um, Trying to find those beta readers that have some experience. I'm not going out saying go and seek, like, the top notch writers out there, because they're busy. But if you can find someone in your circle, I know there's a lot of groups on Facebook for picture books, especially. There's debut author illustrator group, and they will research a book. They'll all together as a group, and then they can break off into groups. So I would really look. That is where I think social media is a great outlet. Is finding a group online where they're like-minded people like you. You're striving toward the same goal, but you need to kind of weed out the people that might not be as honest with you as you need to be. And they have to be honest while also being having the being objective as far as this part of your story isn't making sense, and also give you hopefully give you the boost of, like, I'd like to see the character have this happen, instead of if as soon as you see a beta reader say, I don't like this, I don't like that, cut them loose. Thanks so much. I could see you're busy. That's not going to help you. You need someone that's going to work with you like an editor. So Facebook is great for that. I know there's some on Twitter, and also just approach people. Like, if there's someone, if you're part of SCBWI, I know they do regional chapters. If you can try and meet up with those people, if they have any regional meetings that happen, once a month, or if they just do the once a year, like, meet up, you go out of your comfort zone and try to, buddy up with someone and say, hey, would you be open to this? Would you would you like to be vulnerable with me and read my story, and I'll read yours? And it is really something you have to feel safe and secure with someone, to just share that part it is really scary, because it's a little part of you. So that, I think, is a great way of finding and sharing your work, is on social media, funny enough. Have any of your writing idols changed their style over time, and how has that affected your relationship with them? Has it encouraged you to take on more risks in your own work? Yes, great question. Again, that's why I love looking back at my writing idols, just journey of their own books, and seeing them change style, change maybe voice, or just experiment. John Agee, with his picture books, he does a lot of wordplay. He does a lot of just funny, quirky concepts. And then one book out of nowhere, called It's Just Stanley, was rhyming. And if you do picture books, you'll know rhyming is very, like, no, 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 kind of at this moment in the industry. And so to see him, probably because he's built up his own reputation, like, no, I can carry this off, I can do this rhyming book, like, was such an awesome thing to see. So I think it's a matter of, like, looking what's on trend. And if you're starting out, if you are just beginning your journey, again, look at where the market is. You can experiment later, because hopefully you'll build up that readership that will allow you to do that. But going back and reading your idols and that journey that they take is so imperative. And experiment. Like, I think a fun thing to do, a fun exercise, is to take a story that one of your idols has written, and possibly, change the third act. What would it be like if you got rid of this character? Especially with young adult and middle grade, there can be sometimes, too many characters, and you can try to, like, what would happen if I condensed down these two characters? What would it be like if I actually made this one character into two characters? I mean, I think there's a lot of possibilities of things you can play with. And I'm not saying you need to like write a full out, 300-page novel to do this experiment. Just, get those wheels turning, and like, what would it be like if at the end of Divergent, Tris didn't I won't spoil it. So there's a lot of other ways to see how to play with how a story would happen. And I think allowing yourself the time and the energy to experiment is just a really great way to help like break down just any blocks that are in your way. Um, any mind roadblocks that might be there that it just you don't know why. But again, like I'm more of an illustrator than I'm an author at this point, and one thing I like to do is just paint just crazy abstracts. There's no deadline, there's no goal. It's just, what can I get out of this, and what am I learning along the way of this journey? And that can be your writing. As writers, you could write 1,000 words in one day and maybe just keep that one beautiful sentence, but you got there, but it just took that 1,000 steps. All right, last question. What aspects do you think are the most important to analyze when taking apart a book like you've talked about? Great question. I think one great thing is that third act. I think I struggle with my writing for that because I'll have a really great idea and I like to get into the meat and bones about it. And then it's like you hit the third act, you're like, oh, how is this all going to come together? And I feel like from the YA and middle grade writers I talk to, that's where they get stuck the most. So it's a matter of just tooling, going back, tying up loose ends, or like I was saying, taking a character and making it into one character, to somehow use that character later in your third act to get to an endpoint. But that, I don't know. I don't know why, but when I was working on my dog party book, I wanted my third act to go really dark. I don't know why. It just seemed more right to me. It seemed natural for the dog Frank to like run away and everyone be sad that he ran away. And my agent thankfully and thoughtfully said, this changes the whole tone of your book. If this happens, like, now the kids are panicked, the readers are panicked because now this dog has run away. Like, this was a book about a party. We don't need to have it go like from 0 to 60 on the emotional sadness scale. So I think that really helped nail home, like, oh, right, the overall tone of my book, what do I want? And now I try to approach that, like, even though I hit always that third act and it's this barrier, it's like, well, overall, what am I looking for in what I'm saying in the book to get all together? I can always do another book where there's a sad dog that runs away. That is always a possibility. And for some reason that's stuck in my brain that I want that to happen. But it doesn't need to happen in this story particularly. So allowing yourself just those ideas that you have, write in on another separate page, another document that can happen later. It's precious to you now, but it's maybe not needed. I've heard John Green talk about that a lot. I love his books and podcasts and everything about him. But just him talking and arguing with his editor that there was a lot of times when he, one of his books, I don't know if it was Looking for Alaska, but he needed a certain thing to happen in the book because it was kind of autobiographical. And his editor saying, this doesn't have anything to do with the story. He's like, but this happened in my life. And she's like, this isn't your life, though. This isn't you. This is your character. So we have to subtract and let things happen at other points in other books, knowing that they'll still exist and still be there, but giving us the overall arching sense of what our message is and what we're sharing in this book. I think that is what I strive for when I hit those points that I'm really stuck and I don't know what to do. So wonderful. Are you ready? All right. Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming here. I hope I've answered any questions, some questions, any whatever thoughts you have, at least something to like allowed you the chance to not write or work when you should be. But thank you so much for coming to Write On Con. Again, my name is Mikela Prevost. And yeah, Hope you have a great day and get back to writing.